right, the April 22nd, 2019 regular meeting will now come to order. We're very chatty.
Yes.
We're going to start.
Oh, Jason's favorite part. Okay. The April 22nd, 2019 regular meeting will now come to order. Mr. Buckles, will you please lead us in the pledge?
Yes. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mrs. Smoke, roll call, please.
Mr. Bruno?
I am here.
Mr. Buckles?
here.
Mr. Curry?
Here.
Mrs. D'Ambrosio?
Here.
Ms. Hollenbach?
Here.
Mrs. Nelson?
Here.
Mrs. Clark?
Here. Superintendent's reports.
All right, just three quick pieces. Yeah, as of tonight, this is our last regular board meeting for this board, and I would ask that Jason, as the remaining board officer, recognize Erica, Kurt, and Stephanie for their services with the board.
Good to hear me out. I'll make this brief. I'll put something together. And I just want to take a moment just to thank Kurt and Stephanie and Erica for their service on the board. I think it's fair to say that each of them have dedicated an enormous amount of time and energy to do what they do and to do what they felt is best for this district. District 41 is a wonderful place, and each and every one of them has recognized that and has done what they think is best to serve the 5 communities within the district. Each of them has always been prepared and has done their research. Just the work that they've done for this board has just been incredible, and I'm very proud to have been working with them. Erica's been here for 12 years? Those will be 3 terms, and Kurt and Stephanie have served for the last 4 years. And so I just want to thank you all for the countless hours that you've dedicated to the district throughout your years, and just to know that it hasn't gone unnoticed. It's hard work. You all took your roles seriously, and while we may have had our disagreements over time, there's no one out there can say that you didn't come with the passion and the drive and the true beliefs to serve this board the best way that you felt was best for the district. So thank you all.
Yeah, thank you. And again, echo everything Jason said. Thank you for your service. I really do. Thank you. I'd also like to recognize Jason as he's accepted an invitation to sit on the Governor's Office of Early Education Development Inclusion Subcommittee. The Inclusion Subcommittee of the Integration and Alignment of the Early Learning Council works to ensure integration and alignment of the early childhood programs and initiatives to other systems and issues related to children with or at risk of delays and disabilities. Just a big honor, and just want to congratulate him for being part of this important committee. So, yeah, kudos.
I'm excited.
Nice.
I'm excited.
Well done.
Nice. Finally, today is our last day for at-home learning for our students and staff. And I believe it's been a huge success, and I want to thank everyone who's collaboratively helped develop this: cabinet team, our principals, our GIA and AFSCME leadership, teacher leaders throughout the district who all really gave us great feedback to make this initiative as successful as it has been. So thank you to everybody for doing this. And students, if you haven't turned in your work, tonight at midnight, staff as well, tonight at midnight is the end of it. So we are done. But thank you everybody for putting this together for us.
That's it. All right, board reports. Any reports from board members?
Just real briefly, there is a report for the CIT meeting, and I just want to say, as a way of expressing my appreciation to the team, to all the school teams, that being able to sit in that meeting was really a great learning opportunity to see how the teams are actually dealing with some very substantive learning questions. It was about as rigorous a meeting that I have sat through. And it was very informative, so I want to thank all of those teams for the work that they did throughout the course of the year, and look forward to their further work. So, just thank you.
All right, any other board reports? I'll just say too, thank you. I'll start with this because I think Kurt's going to talk, but Thanks for the kind words. I know Erica and I are going to be here Thursday, right? You're coming Thursday. So we're going to be here Thursday, so I think we were prepared for final remarks then, so I don't really have anything I'm going to say today. But just wanted to say thanks. And just so everyone knows, the first time ever, I might have to leave a board meeting early. My oldest son is getting recognized tonight. He has an honor tonight that I want to try to be at. So depending on where we are in the meeting, I may have to leave early. And Mr. Buckles is going to have to facilitate the meeting, which he's really excited about. He says he's going to go off script and he's going to do it in 6 minutes. So we'll see if that happens.
Well,
So anyway, just to warn everyone, if I may just kind of quietly step out, that's why I'm stepping out, if anybody wonders where I'm heading. That's all I got.
There you go.
Are you saying anything?
No, I'm going fishing.
You want to say anything?
No.
Well, we know it's your last meeting,
Yep.
so thanks. You deserve like a round of applause because it is your last
Huh?
meeting.
Nope.
Another round of applause.
Are we standing?
Good to have family.
Deserve it. All right. Okay, no other board reports. Public participation. Members of the public who wish to address the board should complete the yellow public participation form and hand it to Ms. Schillinger. Oh, no, Mrs. Moak is back.
Ah.
Back. The board recording secretary, she will call your name when it is your turn to speak. I would like to remind members of the audience that speakers should identify themselves and limit your comments to 3 minutes or less. In order to maintain the consistency of public participation, I will inform the speaker when there is 30 seconds remaining and stop the speaker at exactly 3 minutes. Any information left unfinished can be handed or emailed to Mrs. Moak or emailed directly to the board. We expect civility and respectful decorum from all participants and attendees in our meetings, both during public participation and when the board is having discussion. We ask that you don't interrupt others during their public comment time. We also expect that participants will reflect upon the impact their comments will have on others before they are made and consider adjusting them appropriately. All questions raised will be forwarded to the appropriate D41 staff representative for a response if a response is warranted and if the member of the public provides the appropriate contact information.
Michelle Cole?
So I guess want to give my final thoughts, and well, they might not be final. We'll see next year how things go. But when we're talking about inclusion, I know that's going forward. I know it's planned. This is going to happen. I still have a million concerns, as a special education teacher myself, I've been teaching for 19 years, and I run my own self-contained classroom. It's very scary, the safety net that we're pulling away. And I think that the best way to advocate at this point, since there's not really any choices left, is I'm begging the board, for whoever is left on the board, for anybody who's coming next year, to give these teachers a voice. And I don't feel like they probably have that right now, because they're not going to tell Laurel, this is her baby. They're not going to tell her, hey, I have issues with X, Y, and Z. They might not feel comfortable with that. And there are teachers teaching these classrooms who are not tenured. So they can't, get up and just say exactly what they want to say. So what I'm asking for is some anonymous surveys. Think we can do a safe space that we provide for these teachers so that they can properly advocate for the students. If they don't have a voice, they can't advocate for them. And, it should happen now. It should happen, again in November, in February, at the end of next school year, and as things go. And it's not, I'm not asking you to ask on, like, inclusion. Like, I love inclusion. I include as much as I possibly can whenever whatever they're going to be successful at. But instead ask, like, do you have the supports that you need in your classroom to support your students with special needs? Given your class sizes, which are large here, have you been able to, attend to the needs of all your learners in your classroom, not just your special education kids, but your general education kids? Do you feel that you have the expertise at this point going forward into next year in order to successfully help mainstream these kids into the classroom? And if not, what do you think you're missing? What training do you think you can have? That would be help support you better.
30 seconds.
You're doing a better job as far as, being able to be in mainstreams because he's just a lot higher than my youngest son. So my younger son, we were dealing with the IEP meeting for him. We realized that he was being isolated for the majority of the day because as a group we can only come up with estimates of what time and so I don't want that to happen. And I want to see how we can so as we work going forward, I want these parents to always be you guys, the teachers that work with them, I just cannot see that you have to do things that your staff has to do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Got it? Okay. All right. Up first, discussion item, copy paper bid.
Eric, you have a brief?
Keep it brief. Yeah, this is an annual thing we do each spring. We generally go out to bid at this time of year to support a paper purchase for the following school year. Very similar to what we've done in many previous years. Again, we went out to bid earlier this month. We got the results back. Overall, I thought the results were fine. We ended up selecting a paper quality, kind of a mid-range quality of paper, consistent with what we've used the last few years. It seems to function well in our copiers. As a side note, we did use a lower quality. We tried one, a sample, and it immediately jammed up our machine. So there is value in going with a mid-level product. So it's copier, exciting copier stuff. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to address them. I did check with some local colleagues, and our prices and generally in line with what other people were receiving as bid quotes this spring.
Board members, any questions?
I have a question. I just want to point out that part of the information that we got, which I think is, it's been, as always, an ongoing kind of question, is the fact that we've reduced our paper usage, right? So we've been talking about over time bundling services, trying to do that kind of work, and what Eric reported for the record is that we had an over 28% decrease, which it reduces the number of cases of paper we have to purchase from the outset. So that's a $45,500 savings.
No.
I'm sorry, that's the total cost.
Yeah,
it was
total
a
cost is
28%
45.
reduction.
Yeah.
The total cost is now down to $45,500.
Yeah,
So
we're down about
good.
600 cases of paper per year.
Yeah.
Hoping that trend continues and it isn't just a fluke.
So that's good. I think that's good news.
Are teachers limited in their ability to make copies?
No.
And I know there was some discussion about how they move the copiers out of the teachers' classrooms and elsewhere. How's that going? What's the general
From
feedback?
all my conversations with GIA, leadership, and principals, everything is going well.
So is this an item, we have it as a discussion item, but the next board will take action on it? Like, we don't have to close it out?
No. you don't
Okay,
have to
because
close
I thought we had to close
This one's
everything
not
out.
too exciting.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. Board discussion.
Before the board gives their statements, I'll ask Laurel and Katie to put together a PowerPoint, just to kind of set that foundation for the work Laurel has guaranteed me, as I'm looking at her, 30 to 45 seconds per slide.
Minute.
No, no. We are going to move quickly, correct?
Not with
Correct.
Tom. It's supposed to be.
Thank you, I'm excited.
Yes, as Dr. Gordon said, this will absolutely be a brief preview. There have been lots of questions and several different discussions, so we thought it might be helpful just to do a preview that would help to give us an overview of the content relative to IDEA and the work that we're doing here in District 41. So this is just an overview of the IDEA legal requirements relative to the disability categories. You'll see the 13 disability categories for eligibility, and then in Illinois we also have developmental delay. Free appropriate public education, often referred to as FAPE, has some standards that have been, very important in this work throughout the years, and since 1982, the Raleigh standard, as is often referred to, helps us to recognize the level of services that we provide, which was access to education and really just a floor of opportunity for students. It typically referred to what a lot of you have probably heard of as the Chevrolet, not the Cadillac, when you thought about that Raleigh standard. The least restrictive environment is a very important term that we often refer to when we're talking about special education, and the need to make sure that we are looking at any student who has a disability and that that student has the right to be with his or her peers in general education to the maximum extent appropriate. That removal from a general education class should only be based on the severity of the disability being such that supplementary aids and services cannot be provided in the general education environment, and that indeed if an IEP team does need to do that, they do need to provide the reason for doing that. We often refer to this as thinking about which services are portable, which services can be brought to the student in his or her home school before we consider reasons for removing the student. In 2017, there was a landmark Supreme Court case. This was really the first time that the Raleigh standard had been updated. And so, in my opinion, actually a fantastic case for school districts in thinking about something more than the floor. So thinking about providing that opportunity for all students to have not only that access to education, but also to make sure that the student's IEP is reasonably calculated so that a student makes meaningful progress on his or her goals and objectives, and that this is in light of the student's individual circumstances. So we still think about all of those other pieces of the standard that were a part of Raleigh, but we really think about whether or not our goals and objectives are ambitious enough to meet that student's needs in the least restrictive environment so that he or she can make progress in that general education curriculum. There was a question asked, I know, last time about some of the current research, and I recognize that there are a few quotes here that are a little bit dense, but just to point towards the center one there, I'll just highlight that in my brief time frame here. Relative to co-teaching and peer supports, paraprofessionals, and cooperative structures are some of the things that are being recommended in the most current research as to how we help support and build up our classes so that they're inclusive for all students or most students in that general education curriculum. And this does take, as you know, and as we've been working through, lots of professional development to help meet the needs for all of our students with differentiation across the board for students with various needs. I wanted to make sure that our attention really centers and focuses on that D41 Special Education Review Report, which was brought to us by outside consultants commissioned by this Board of Education. And I came in soon after this report and began the work which were the recommendations from that Special Ed Review Report, and then fortunately helped us through that strategic planning committee, the board committee, to develop how we would actually carry out those charges from the Special Education Review Report. So these are 4 of the objectives that were recommendations from that Special Education Review Report. Modeling actions that reflect supportive and inclusive educational culture. Really looking at that least restrictive environment in our inclusive education practices and the systems change that it would take us to step through that. And then our multi-tiered system of supports, which we needed to improve across the district. And also the advancing that school, family, community collaborative partnership to emphasize our meaningful engagement for all students. One of the wonderful things that we've had an opportunity then as a part of that work is to come together as our strategic planning committee and develop our District 41 inclusionary principles. Our beliefs as stakeholders in the community on the strategic plan committee And we did this based on the same vision and the same mission for all D41 students that is here on the wall in the boardroom. And then focused our work for the strategic plan committee and prioritized what we needed to do next across the 3-year plan based on these 7 inclusionary principles. The next few slides just highlight the strategic plan year 1 goals relative to those specialized academic classrooms, because that was a focus of the board's questions for tonight. And the goals that we have worked to accomplish those. This is year 1 in the current plan to increase opportunities for students in the structured academic class, or SAC as it was commonly referred to, for students to be in their home schools by 2018-19. And then what we've done to accomplish that in blue. Year 2 is the similar goal, and then more work, I didn't advance that. And then more work that was accomplished during the course of this school year is also in blue to help explain the work that has been done to help advance that goal for students who are in those structured academic classrooms. Another piece of this goal that's really interconnected is in our strategic plan year 1 goals relative to pre-K, and making sure that we started to create a plan to increase those blended opportunities for all of the students in our early childhood classrooms. As we talked about, that had to be a part of our work so that we could not just look at one area, but look at all levels, from early childhood up through those students who are in middle school, and plan for them accordingly so that we could help to build the staff development as well as those student opportunities for learning and knowing how they would make progress with their more typically developing peers. And similarly, this is the strategic plan. Wrong click. Thank you, Katie. Year 2 goal relative to pre-K, and again the progress that we have made in blue. We're almost at the end here, but I do want to share with you a few slides that help explain the professional development supports that we put in place this year. Last year, we had the opportunity to really get feedback from across the board through surveys and through discussions, and have continued that through our CIT committee this year to make sure that we are addressing all of our needs throughout District 41 at every level and across all of our disciplines of professionals. So this is part of the work that we have been doing in 2018-19 in response to that. And then furthermore, and actually taking a deeper dive, this includes some of the professional development work that we have been doing in response specifically to the co-teaching initiatives, as well as to those blended opportunity initiatives in early childhood for our students, for our staff who need to work with students who really need some differentiation that's very unique to their special education needs. And then one further slide to help explain our professional development initiatives and how we have carried through with this in a very comprehensive manner across the district, which included that co-teaching, those co-teaching coaching opportunities where we were able to co-plan, co-teach, and reflect with Dr. Julie Costin, helping to guide that work. And this was done at our different levels throughout our different buildings. We also took opportunities to do this through book studies in the buildings, where that was a way that our educators told us they wanted to learn and wanted to work together to grow from their own part of the journey that they were on. Professional development always allows us to access that at different places depending on how our learning has progressed through the years. And then finally, we just wanted to take an opportunity to express a variety of ways that we have really engaged with the board and helped with our communication throughout the year. This is, again, highlighting just 2018-19. We started this process in 2017-18 to help with our ongoing communication with the board liaison, Jason Lobeck, of course, in our planning for our strategic plan meetings as they come quarterly, and as we plan for those and what our agendas need to be. And then also had opportunities when Dr. Julie Costin was here just recently in February to engage in 2-by-2 conversations with board members. And fortunately, in addition to that, we've had the opportunity for those board updates, but then further presentations like this evening. And I think finally, our communication with parents. This is a part that I believe is really important in all of the work with the strategic plan committee. Is certainly the communication is certainly one area that we have to emphasize and continue to build so that we can build that foundation and that two-way communication that goes on with our community members, with parents through those IEP meetings, but also through SPAC meetings, which include some presentations that have been specifically requested, such as about how students transition from early childhood to kindergarten, which we recently presented, and then other SPAC leadership committee meetings and opportunities to present for open community evening nights where parents and other taxpayers and stakeholders in the communities were welcome to come and listen and participate and give us their feedback with Dr. Julie Costin here. And I have to say, really enjoyed those opportunities and hope to continue more of those in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Laurel. There really is an opportunity just to kind of take all the board members' questions that we've received over the past probably 10 days and try to answer them in a large overarching picture. Stephanie?
All right, I guess I can go first, since I put this on the agenda. You know, one thing I just wanted to say about this presentation too is that the board didn't see it in advance, so we're just seeing this now for the first time. You know, and some of the issue that I particularly wanted to talk about, which was our SAC classrooms. You know, the information in here, you know, that we talk about. This isn't, you know, some of the professional development we talk about, communication with the board, and communication with parents. That was just about special ed in general. It wasn't necessarily about this issue. So just kind of want to clarify that. Like this kind of I see as information just kind of overarching, but not necessarily specific to my concerns. So my eyes are getting bad here. I just typed up my notes so I could just follow them along here. And I'm just going to read, maybe ad-lib a little bit of this, but one thing that kind of came up out of the last meeting is our mission was brought up. There was an email that went out to all the board members and administrators from a board member, and it talked about our mission, which is to embrace the future with optimism, working in partnership with our community on behalf of our children. We develop intellect, engage creativity, foster responsibility, and build positive and collaborative relationships to enable all children to thrive in a changing and increasingly global society. So I'm going to comment on that because Mr. Buckles and I received criticism saying that we weren't following the mission during the meeting. And I have a few things I want to get on the record about that and why I know personally I don't think we're necessarily doing what's best with special ed. It doesn't seem like best practice. The discussion about special ed at the last BOE meeting, it was direct, but I feel it's something the board should be talking about. It all came to a head because the administration eliminated a program and did not inform the board or present any data supporting the decision. And I know the administration does not see, and I'll get into this, the SAC classes as a program. I'll get into that in a minute. But would it be acceptable for the administration to eliminate the dual language program, which we are not required to use that program? It's what we choose to deliver instruction to native Spanish-speaking students. But would it be acceptable if they eliminated that without any discussion with the board? That's what I'm comparing this to. We eliminated an instructional model, and I don't find this acceptable, and I hope at least in commenting tonight, my fellow board members who at least agree with that point will speak up tonight so it isn't repeated again in the future. At the last meeting, I spoke with Dr. Gordon. He was well aware of what I intended to discuss at the meeting. He even told me that he didn't agree with me, but he understood that I wanted to discuss it with the board about maintaining the SAC programs. The wording, he selected the wording for the agenda, and I am assuming he informed Laurel, so she shouldn't have been surprised by my suggestion at the meeting. I feel like I presented thoughtful reasoning, and the conversation degraded from there with really was responses from board members before I even opened my mouth, and then a lack of answers, and I feel like defensiveness from board members. What I found is I have respectfully asked questions over the course of the last year and a half, and I continue to receive vague answers, or I feel like I'm completely dismissed by the administrative team. I send emails, I don't get responses. I've even had board members, I know board members have suggested the administration needs to address my questions, and they go unanswered. It would be easy to just sit here and be nice, thank everyone, and move on since my tenure on the board is about over, but I feel really strongly about this, and I will do what's necessary to address these concerns for our parents and our students, and I'm not going to apologize for it. I'm thankful that Mr. Buckles has been willing to ask the tough questions along with me over the past 4 years. And, in the presentation we talked about, it talks about a 3-year plan. Well, in my mind, when you have a plan, you present the details of that plan. We were presented with the details of year 2 at the beginning of year 2. And we now talk about how we have a 3-year plan. We've never seen the plan for the 3rd year. So in my mind, that's not a plan when we're not being presented the details in advance. We see our goals, but we don't see what are the outcomes, what are the lessons learned, what do we need to do moving forward. I think the suggestion of a survey is a great one. I think that's what we need to be doing, is gathering that feedback, because that's a piece that's missing for me. I believe the board should provide oversight and hold the administration accountable for the dollars spent and programs in place. Some board members choose to have complete trust and confidence in all of the decisions that the administration makes. Other board members and myself questioning the administration does not mean we aren't following the mission of the district. Clearly, the mission is about students, as I read earlier, which is who we're advocating for. For years, the board and Dr. Gordon turned their heads when Mr. Buckles and I expressed continued concern over special ed services in D41. It took parents speaking at board meetings for you to finally listen. And that was a time when I feel we should have been apologizing for not following the mission. And I fear we're heading down the same road again, with some trust being eroded in the special education community. The discussion at the last BOE meeting, it was not degrading of inclusionary practices. On the contrary, Mr. Buckles and I both said we support inclusion. Where we differ is what it will look like. We recognize that one size does not fit all, and we're concerned that the D41 admin is eliminating an option that is necessary and really have provided no data to support the decision. A change in programming of this manner should not be relayed in a staffing report with no mention of it by the admin. That is where a breakdown of trust has occurred by the admin not answering questions and being forthright with changes that are being made. We already saw information on the Individuals with Disabilities Act that says children should receive special education in a least restrictive environment. And it means as much time should be spent as possible with peers who do not receive special education. But it does not say that specialized academic classrooms should not exist. And it doesn't say that they have to be educated in their home school. I realize that's a priority, but it's not a law that says education has to happen in our home school. As a matter of fact, I have not been able to find a benchmark district or a neighboring school district that doesn't have some sort of centralized special education programming in their district. To compare this to dual language, because I used that earlier, we could say that dual language is, oh wait, hold on, I'm the wrong page here. So I presented many reasonings at the last meeting for maintaining SAC, continuity of service, cost, preparedness, lack of data, the objectives that we had. I used my personal examples to support how I thought the program was beneficial, because I feel our admin didn't seem to believe it was. Have they had a child in the program? What are they basing it on? Do they have data to support it? I have seen none from them, so I had to form an opinion based on my empirical data. I've also heard from educators throughout the area who say that I'm spot on with some of my concerns. Other districts are talking about us and they seems like that we have good intentions but not a detailed implementation plan. and I'm really having a difficult time understanding the reasons for eliminating the program right now. There's a few that's been given. First, we hear there aren't students that could use the program, yet we maintain a structured preschool. So where's the continuity of services? What changes are going to occur for a student from preschool to kindergarten that they don't need that environment anymore? Are we ignoring a student's needs in order to fit him or her into a system that we're designing? And we have no options for students, so we could be forcing students out of our district, which could be costly and completely contrary to our initial objectives with all of this. We've been more inclusive in our preschools, but where's the data to show us improvements we've need, if there's improvements needed, if there's concerns, is there a need for more resources? And I've looked at meetings from the Special Ed Strategic Task Force, and I don't think they've looked at any data from the preschool in regards to that either. Second reasoning we've been given is students need to be educated in their home school. I can find nowhere in the guiding principles or goals of the task force this was a bottom line requirement of our work when we began this. The district maintains that a continuum of services can be provided in a home school, which may be true, but will it be the same service that we provide in our SAC programs? Dr. Gordon had assured me if you had a child in 5th grade who is academically several years behind their peers, they could be pulled out for instruction with the resource teacher. This is the answer that I get when I question, well, what's the future of AEC? Because if we can't pull out students for special ed, why do we pull out students for AEC? So I'm basically being told, well, you could pull out students for special ed, but they would just go with the resource teacher. So in my mind, that's recognizing that there may be some students that need to be pulled outside of a classroom, but is pulling them into a program with a group of peers better, or is sitting with a resource teacher basically by themselves for most of their academic day preferred? In my mind, that type of environment, having a kid work one-on-one, is more restrictive than having a program that they can be a part of where they have peers and they have other things that they work on. I think that's the big, the overriding issue here with me with this, is I feel we're creating a more restrictive structure with the end goal being to keep a student in their home school, which that should not be the end goal. To compare this to dual language, we choose to have students be educated at Churchill Elementary, even if it isn't their home school, if they're lucky enough to be selected to be in dual language. So think about that for a second. Isn't that contrary to our guiding principles for special ed? They have to be in their home school, but for dual language, if their parents choose for them to be exposed to that program, we let them go to Churchill. Why can't we do the same for special ed? Why are we treating special ed differently? And like I said, I think it still goes back to the administration doesn't see any benefit to having this sort of program. They just see it as a classroom, which is my last point. We're told it's not a program. It's a class. It's academic instruction. It can be delivered by any teacher in any school setting. Once again, I'm not an educator. I have experience with this as a parent, and I completely disagree. There are teachings that occur that cannot be replicated by a student spending the majority of their academic day alone. As a matter of fact, the classes used to be called the Modified Instruction Program. That used to be the name of it. It was a program. We added a special ed coordinator position in 2017, and to quote from the report when we added it, this position would be a special education certified teacher to work with the SAC staff at Ben Franklin, Forest Glen, and Hadley. Their role would be to assist in instruction, coaching, resources, assessment, data conversations, including progress monitoring and parent education programming. Also, in the job description, it says that assist in the design of programs and strategies to meet the needs and assist with the effectiveness of program designs. Well, what programs are we talking about? So we actually have a position in our district, the special education coordinator, that's supposed to design programs, and we're now saying, oh, they're not programs, they're just classrooms. It makes absolutely no sense to me. To compare this to dual language again, we could just say dual language is a classroom, not a program. It's just a room where the instruction occurs. But there is a benefit to working together in that model of dual language. We hear it all the time, Bruce, right? There's an advantage to the native Spanish-speaking students being in that classroom environment where you have native English-speaking students. They learn from each other. That's the model. I don't see this as any different with special ed. They learn from the inclusion model with their peers, but for their academics, if there's such a vast difference or if there's other needs they need besides just academics, they learn from their peers. They learn from a program. They learn from a classroom, not sitting one-on-one by themselves. I tried to plead the case that we're moving forward in what I believe is a reckless manner to our most vulnerable students. The admin disagrees with me and are going to move forward with what they see as best. As I mentioned before, I've called other districts. I've not been able to find a district that either is a benchmark or neighboring district that does not have special education programming. And everyone here should know, I was told our district did no research in comparison to any other district in coming up with our model. We've just done this on our own. I don't know, I'm not sure how that's best practice, because a consultant who lives in another state and comes here for 9 days a year designed it for us. All of that said, I'm not going to seek board consensus for the district to maintain the programs, although I feel that that's what should be done. But one of the reasons I'm not going to do it is Bob informed me in my president meeting last week that he apparently is going to be next board president. And if I were to successfully take action to do such a thing, that he would look to have the new board reverse this direction and decision, and possibly. So I don't want to make this a game between the new board and the old board. I'm just going to let the administration do what they think is best. But I wouldn't want to be clear. I wasn't looking for the administration to do anything where I was creating programming. It was maintaining something that exists that's been effective. And I'm worried that if we're to do something else when I don't feel we have a solid implementation plan, that we're setting students up for failure. We have a new superintendent starting who has extensive experience in special ed. All I asked was we maintain a resource until we've thoroughly evaluated its necessity and our preparedness to not have it. Otherwise, I fear we're going to spend $100,000 outplacing students when we could use that money towards programming in our district. I've said nothing about our building leaders or our cabinet and their commitment to our students. Some of the positive experiences that I draw on are from working with them. But all I've said is that, I know we have the best intentions, but things can still go wrong for our students. And as a board, it's our responsibility to provide the oversight. And if we don't do it, there's no need for a board. My questions that I have moving forward that I'm going to put on the table for the new board to try to carry out are, do we have all the services that we need? Do we have calming rooms at every school for a child having a difficult day? If not, what are we going to do? If something occurs in the classroom, are we going to be clearing classrooms? If there's a, violent type of outburst in a classroom and we have no alternative space for that child. If the district does plan to be fully inclusive, then will the AEC programs eventually be eliminated? Otherwise, why are we only eliminating classrooms for our special education students? When the special education audit was completed, there were many concerns from parents. Inclusion was part of it, but their main concern centered around professional development and programming. We've heard so much this past year or two about inclusion, but not as much in the other areas. And they all go hand in hand. One of the biggest issues for professional development programming was how we handle children with behavioral issues or children on the autism spectrum, and how are we giving our staff the tools they need to be successful when working with those students. And I don't know that we've provided that to the extent of what parents were asking for. So what have we done in terms of professional development in regards to that? And what have we done for students with dyslexia in terms of programming? I don't want the board to forget that this is a big part of what was happening with special ed. Looking at our benchmark districts, we haven't done that. Killdeer has partnered with another district to have a variety of special education programming. Why aren't we looking at what they're doing? They're a benchmark district that surpasses us academically. I've repeatedly asked if we could partner with District 89, because I know we're talking about a low number of students, and if we partnered up together, maybe we could create programming with them that seems a better use of resources. But I get frustrated because I feel like we pick and choose when it's imperative to be like our benchmark districts, basically whenever it supports whatever decision we're making. We need to involve the community. A lot of these meetings that are mentioned with the community, we're not necessarily specific talking about inclusion or what this plan looks like or what it's going to look like in the future. I've had parents say to me, I wish I had paid more attention. I didn't know we were eliminating programming. And I actually said to them it wouldn't have mattered, because we've literally never even talked about it. So we need to really be engaging people and letting them know what the plan is and getting their feedback and getting their concerns so we can take them into account and we're not reacting, we're being proactive. moving forward. And then what are the expected outcomes? The decision, I haven't seen data driving the decision, so what will be used to determine if it's working or not? When is the district going to measure social, emotional, and behavior data? We've been asking, Mr. Buckles and I've asked for that for years. I know there are tools out there to do that. I'm wondering why we don't choose to use them. Teacher specialization kind of came to mind when I was sitting here. The board had asked for that to be evaluated by the administration, and we were supposed to get a report back this year, which we didn't get on looking at that moving forward from a social emotional standpoint, from our learning standpoint, from growth. But I think that's something, especially as these students roll up into those older grades, how is it impacting those? Because I don't want people to forget, when we implemented teacher specialization and multi-age and looping, which everything's been taken out except for teacher specialization, the number one concern from parents was that the teachers were not going to know their children as well because they were going to spend half as much time with them. That would, I say, was the number one concern. The answer to that was they will loop with their teacher. So even though the teacher only has them for half a day, they'll have them for 2 years in a row. So that would mitigate the concern of not knowing the students as well. They would have the bonus of having them for 2 years. That number one concern, that was the answer. Looping was taken out after a year, 2 years, after 2 years. So you've now taken out looping. Well, what about the concern of really knowing our kids when we're only spending half a day with some of our youngest learners? I think that's really all I have. I apologize for being long, but it was important for me to just share all of that. Like I've said, I don't think anybody has ill intent, but I have to go with my gut on things and what I've observed and what I've experienced, and that's why I had to ask and bring forward the concerns that I did. And I just asked my fellow board members who are going to be new, to seriously take these seriously. And it seems like a small population that you talk about with special ed. It's roughly 12 to 14% of our students, and it varies their need. These SAT classrooms, it's obviously a really small population, but it impacts our whole school when we look at how we're gonna include our kids and how we're going to have our staff and our support staff and everybody work together to make it as successful as possible for all of our kids. And sometimes I just worry, I think from my past experience, it seems like the wheels have to fall off before we work out all the kinks, and I'm just worried that that's what could happen moving forward. That's all I have to say.
Other board members? Other statements?
I mean, I guess I agree with a lot with what Stephanie said as to, making sure that we're providing for the needs of kids. But I do just want to address a couple of things. The IDEA regulations addresses what is a least restrictive environment, and it addresses it in regulation section 300.114 A2, and there it says each public agency must ensure that to the maximum extent possible, to the maximum extent appropriate, children with disabilities, including children in public and private institutions or other care facilities, are educated with children who are non-disabled, and II, special classes, separate schooling, or other removal of children with disabilities from the regular education environment occurs only if the nature or severity of the disability is such that education in regular classes with the use of supplementary aids and services cannot be achieved satisfactorily. The regulations go on in section 300.116 to discuss placement. It discusses who's to be involved in the placement decision, and that group to include parents and other persons knowledgeable about the child, the evaluation, data placement options, and is to be made in conformity with the LRE. But in Part C, I want to just read that, and it says, unless the IEP of a child with a disability requires some other arrangement, the child is educated in the school that he or she would attend if not disabled. So the regulations do point to educating kids at their home schools if it's possible, and that's really where we're headed with this. And I think that's a difference between special education services and dual language services. When we're talking about dual language, we're talking about a voluntary choice that some families may make for their kids. When it comes to special education services, it's definitely not a voluntary decision. And it's a decision that must comply with IDEA requirements. Then as to the thought process that Julie Costin was somehow involved in putting together of the plan that was discussed by Laurel in her presentation. Julie Costin was never at any of our strategic planning meetings. She was discussed, and in fact, when Julie Costin was discussed, the consensus reached at the committee was Julie Costin's plan is all inclusion all the time, but we have to make D41's definition of inclusion our own. And we have a committee that's made up of 30-some people, including parents, teachers, paraprofessionals, aides, related service providers, gen ed teachers, special ed teachers, assistant principals, principals, administrators. I'm sure I'm missing some. And there's discussion, there's thoughtful discussion, there's back and forth, there's disagreement. And decisions aren't come to as easily or willy-nilly, for lack of a better term. And I think it's key. What's most key, and I think kind of overlooked in Laurel's presentation, was if we get into the strategic plan goals for year 1 and year 2, if you look at the goals that were identified, the goals are create a plan for increased opportunities for students in structured academic classes to be in their home schools for the 2018-19 or based on individual needs. This is the 2018-2019 year. We're not there, and we're not there because we didn't have the PD in place, and that's something that the committee discussed. What do we need? What do we need to do to make sure that we're there? And we spent this year to discuss the PD that was done, and so I just want people to understand that this was a thorough process that's been in place, and it wasn't based on something that that Julie Costin would have said this is what you had to do. It was a decision that was come to by this committee, brought back to this board, and that's where we're at. And if a goal was written and it wasn't in the right place, the district wasn't in the right place to go through and implement that, we didn't bring it to the board. We didn't try to do that. Holding off a year is probably the best decision. And I'm proud of the work the committee's done on it, but I think it's important to recognize that these discussions involve individual kids. And if we forget that, as Stephanie 100% rightfully points out, we're never going to do this right. And we have to make sure that while at a board table we're talking about special ed program in general, that when it comes to the implementation of that the district as a whole is looking at each individual kid and making sure that the needs of each individual kids are addressed in the best way as possible for that individual kid to be successful.
Jay, I just want to clarify to that. Like, I don't have an issue with the inclusionary practices or the goals. I think the issue is the implementation, and where it's come to the head with this is we keep saying it will be based on an individual student, that will guide what things look like, but we've eliminated an option, so that isn't even a possibility. And I think that the district needs to evaluate that moving forward. Is it most important to us that we send students to their home school, and if they spend a majority of their day by themselves, because for academic reasons they're going to be by themselves with a resource teacher, is that better, or the educational outcomes for that child going to be better than if there was a program that existed? And I think we could sit here and debate it because we're going to disagree, but that's the number one concern. And like I said, look at our benchmark districts, our surrounding districts. I can't find one that doesn't have programming, and it troubles me that our district is saying it's not programming, it's just a class, and we could do that at any of our schools. So those are the questions that are going to have to be answered going forward, and I won't be here to ask them. That's why I'm going to ask them tonight. My issue is not with the goals and the guiding principles, those are high level. It's how you facilitate that. And I think the problem, how I've gotten to the point I am today, is I've just kept hearing the IEP will guide it, the IEP will guide it, we'll do what every student needs per their IEP. Well, what does that mean? If you've eliminated something, you know, I don't think we've been, I mean, I think that there are some parents who had students in our SAC programs who were told, oh, they have to go back to their home school. I don't know that that's the IEP guiding that. That's just a directive that we're going to eliminate a resource. So there's just a lot of concerns with it, and I've said them all, and we'll just hopefully have to move forward. Unfortunately, like I said, I worry the wheels will fall off before we truly evaluate it, but
Are you done with your statement?
I'm good.
Are you good?
thank you.
Okay, who's next?
I'll go next. We received, just for public observation, lots of questions that I think every board member sent in some question. There were some questions sent in a couple times with some different frame of reference on it, but I, first of all, want to thank all the board members for sending questions in. That's our job. I agree with Stephanie on that. But also the work that goes into distilling the information down to, what I would suggest is a reasonable summary to allow the board to have some, detail for their perspective, right? So I want to speak to the question of, what Stephanie raises, which is this idea that questions that seek to understand are important and a really crucial part of a board member's responsibility. There's no question about it. We all come to the table, have all come to the table at whatever year we were elected with an interest in something, in service, in stewardship, in our community, in the belief in education. We could have run for something else here in the community, but we chose this board. And so when that's the intention, and I really thought about this, I had 9 hours on a plane yesterday to think about this work. When that is the intention, to seek understanding and perception and perspective, the oversight role of the Board of Education aligns with a certain condition, which I think is the most challenging part of board service, and that is we don't do the work. We ask questions to understand the work. We have meetings to distill it down, to push, to probe, to question, to respond to recommendations of the administration, right? And it's this condition that board members' expertise, it doesn't lie in the daily functioning of each classroom in the school district. Rather, it expects a duty on our part to listen, to learn, to ask again, to grow in our own board appreciation for the complexity and this specifically individualized nature of a child's education. And I'm speaking about all kids, in addition to certainly what has been put on the table tonight. So it's been asserted that students with individual education plans will not or may not be provided the best educational placement for their learning needs. We were asked to think about this from a belief or a value statement. I believe that the intention and the impact of the work in inclusionary practices these past 2+ years, really starting, to Stephanie's point, 4 years ago when she was elected, and that interest and focus being special needs, special education. But these practices for these 2+ years for students is directed in a positive manner, in a positive way, and that our district educators, staff members, leaders in the building, those principals, and especially the assistant principals who are charged with those relationships. We've talked about this before. This district cut at one point in my board tenure down to 2 assistant principals that shared buildings to save money. It was a cost-cutting measure. And then brought them back. Because what we realized was that those positions were absolutely integral in understanding and building relationship with the parents and with those IEP teams. And so this district, in that one example, and there are others, does recognize the need to take that step back, the need to reassess. And the parents invest each day to make the best choices and offer the best opportunities for all children, with necessary assessment, adjustment, and even wholesale changes throughout the school year based on how challenging it is to understand how kids learn. We've gone from the language of teaching to educating in my 12 years on the board. Not talking at students, facilitating their learning. We've all seen examples in the end of the year school improvement planning and the detail of the school improvement plans on how the facilitated nature of education has evolved. The professional learning communities, which is not vernacular, it's not cliche, it is practice, and it takes time, and it challenges teachers, and we've seen them over the years grow into that. It's a profession by the very nature of what educators do that educators continue to learn. So for the following reasons, and they've been identified already in some pluses and in some challenges, I do believe that our district is following its vision for students to inspire, to engage, to enlighten, and also to try, right, to test limits, to reach potential, to surprise their educators. I'll wait till Kurt comes back.
Does anyone else want to go ahead since Erica
No,
wants to wait?
I'm not done. I just want to wait till my fellow board member returns. He's just getting water. It's fine. Just going to the bathroom. All right. I will continue. So for the following reasons, I believe that District 41 is aligning its vision, following its vision for students to inspire them, to engage them, to enlighten them, to try, to test limits, to reach their potential, to surprise their educator and aides, to surprise their parents, and even surprise themselves. And I know in reading some of the minutes from the Special Education Strategic Plan Committee, there are some stories of that that helped, in my reading at least of the minutes, those who were a part of that committee understand some of the growth. That's hard to compartmentalize, right? It's minute. Sometimes it's huge. So District 41, including our board, has fully supported these partnerships, including Dr. Julie Costin. We're not the first district in Dr. Costin's consultation, right? We're not a guinea pig. That's my term. Nobody has said that. I'm using that. She is a national, international expert in both research and application. She started in the classroom, if I'm not mistaken, correct? Of inclusion practices both at the elementary and the secondary level. District 41 evaluations, and we've seen them over the years, do ask, they have, they do, and will continue to, and will be improved upon, right? That's what boards do. We rotate, new voices come in, new perspectives, challenging questions. And those evaluations will help to refine and redefine those next steps. And they have asked the question of, how are we doing in the classroom? What's missing? What's been the challenge? What's the obstacle? What's the rating on that? It is quantified. And those go back to the building leaders and their assistant principals and their teams. They're building leadership teams and those school improvement plans are built from there. The district strategic plan for special education committee, which came as a result of what Stephanie described as those parents' voices coming to the table, right? Coming from the audit, has been the guiding partner and that collaborator across the district on implementing these approaches. Again, I did not attend any of the meetings, but I've read all of the minutes as they've been presented. Questioning them, adjusting them, gathering feedback, providing focused professional development, small group teacher and staff consultation with Dr. Costin and others as was presented tonight. Board member Jason Lobach has been the board's liaison from the formation of the committee. And I will admit that when we talked about that committee, I questioned whether or not it should be a board committee. You know, I wondered if that was the right thing to do. It's been the right thing to do. And it's been essential that we've had that voice, those sets of eyes, and that participation. And as you read the minutes, his voice saying, well, what about that? Questioning things. He has been the partner from the board to this work and have read through the minutes how the committee has addressed the issues, made adjustments, presented different approaches. It is all as frustrating as that can be, and I hear that in the questions and read them in the responses to all the questions today and earlier last week, to not know precisely, so what will happen if that? What will happen when this? And I know that that's a challenge, but I do not see wheels falling off. I know that when Jason felt there was a disconnect with the plan, as you've described it, he would raise the question or concern, and in fact has at these meetings, and that needs to continue. But the ability for the district, and this is, you know, has been a challenge my entire 12 years, to effectively educate all children is dependent on all different levels of trust. It's trust up, level across, down, in partnership with the parents, trust with that the administration has of its board as it rotates and changes every couple years. Trust with the IEP teams of parents, administrators, teachers, staff, building leaders. Our Director of Student Services that has changed over time, in my time. They all bring their various daily experiences and perspectives for each child to develop the best learning environment for them. Best learning environment for them in that moment, that space that they're in, how they're learning, how they're being educated, how it's being facilitated. And then continuous assessment. I agree with that, by the team that's guiding the decision making. I don't disagree with that. This is as complex a part of education as I have been educated about myself for 12 years. And I think, Jason, you said this at the last board meeting. I grabbed my notes on this, but you said, and when we mess up, if that was your term, right? We fix it. We have to fix it. Do we ever want to not teach at 100% or 110% or make it perfect? Of course not. I'm sure you never feel that way in your classroom. I know my daughter is a fourth-year educator, is constantly talking about that when we talk. Everyone. I don't care at what level you are. I've heard teachers. I saw teachers, when we put smart boards in classrooms, say to themselves, I can't do this. I have to teach the way I know. And then evolve to that understanding. So, last thought, and this is me, this is mine. There's no more board member, past, present, or future, who will ever see a student's daily routine, ever. We just don't see it. As many visits as I've made, when I went to Franklin earlier this year and last year, and I saw students in our SAC classrooms who were working with individual aides, right? We don't know. Teachers and staff, all staff, lunchroom, our janitors, all people who touch our kids, right? They spend they spend the 6 to 7 hours a day, 5 days a week, with a student in their classroom and throughout the day to witness the steps the child takes. I have to believe, and I do believe, that those minute improvements, or large, to see how that child is progressing is a part of the larger intention of always making this better. Always making this better. Thank you.
Other statements?
Bruce, you said you have something?
Yeah. I, you know, I think as a board, you know, our job isn't to do the work, but we need to evaluate the work. And our duty is to listen. And right now I'm listening to Mrs. Coles and other parents who think that the continuation of this program is best for their children. When something like this is eliminated, the parents have no choice. And it's hard for teachers to speak up. And I've spoken to many educational experts in special ed, and they're surprised at the course we're taking. We should hold up on this. I don't think the board was consulted, truly consulted in an open fashion, and we should put this on hold. This is like think tank. It's like a rush to innovate that's not completely vetted. I don't understand the rush. I don't understand not being properly consulted as a board member. I mean, I know legally we can do this, but I don't think it's the best choice. We should take our time. In 2 months, we're going to have a new superintendent. I'd like her to make this decision and maintain the program until then. Beyond that, I agree with what Stephanie said.
Other statements?
Yeah, I mean, you know, Steph said it best, and she used my name a few times. We've obviously talked about this a lot. And what Bruce just said, you know, obviously I'm going off, and so the new board's going to have to make some decisions. But we have a new superintendent coming in with an extensive background with special ed. And when you're taking an option away, which, again, I don't understand ever taking options away, especially when we can afford to keep the option. It's not a financial thing. We're a couple months away from the new superintendent being here. I don't see why there's any harm in letting her take a look at this and weighing in on it. You know, you're not harming anybody by doing it. You know, and we've heard parents talk about the SAC classrooms and the positivity in some of those situations. So that would be, I mean, all I can do is just tell you what I think. You know, and it's up to the next board to decide what they want to do with it.
But you know, we've had a lot of conversation, and I, you know, appreciate everybody weighing in and helping me, you know, evolve and try to understand, you know, the vision you guys have. And in so many ways, you know, Steph is right, Erica is right. You know, I mean, I agree with so many points you guys have presented. I mean, for me, it is kind of a head scratcher for me too. If we're going to have you know, someone new coming in with special education experience to why not wait and go from there. And also why, you know, I mean, I don't know, Kurt, you couldn't have said it better. If we have the options, why don't we keep the options? Like, and at the end of the day, I was really still have two major, I guess, questions. And I think, you know, a parent had brought this up, and that was a very good suggestion about the survey. To kind of get feedback, I think, that wouldn't be an overreach of the board. I think it would be, when we talk about the goals, I'm kind of looking at these. I guess for me, and we have talked, in the presentation was discussion about professional development, things like that. And I think a little bit more beyond just providing the professional development. My question is always like, well, how well is it received? How much did the teacher take in, and how much could that be, is that then implemented to the students, and how can we then, at a board level, we don't see the dailies. I don't know about the calming room, so that's new to me. But how can we see as from the board level, those improvements after all the the systematic changes and the professional development, having consultants come in, trying to help us, and guide us to to best practice. So that's kind of something I'd be interested in kind of do with the next board, make sure that we have that kind of oversight. And I'm still a little fuzzy on kind of like what's our, facility needs or resources that would be required for going forward. I know I think you said for the next year coming up, we don't, we're not needing additional resources, facilities-wise. I think we're not making any changes there, but it seems like to me if we could look at, what's happened at Bank Franklin and, what we've been needing to do for preschool and kind of, plan and predict what might be needed. Because now, truthfully, we're going from centralized location to kind of going out and, spreading it to all, going to different schools. So are we then needing very specific type of facilities to make sure that we have what we need for our students? So that's kind of my point I have to make. So, yeah.
Well, thank you. So
Bob, you're limited to 2 minutes.
your first and only action of board president. That seems perfectly appropriate to me. Put me on the clock.
Take
brother.
as much time.
I won't do that, but that's generous. So really, 4 things, okay? 4 things that I've learned and value about our special education services. And of course, this is what I've learned over the 2 years that I've been on the board. So first, the district really has been creating more inclusive opportunities for all kids based on the students' individual needs, consistent with the goals of the multi-year strategic plan, and as was reflected in the presentation in year 1 and year 2 of the plan, preparations have been made, for example, for a blended learning environment to develop in early childhood learning. And the plan also clearly states that the district would develop the capacity to transition students currently in structured settings into classrooms, into their home schools. So that was part of the plan. That was textually recorded, and that was reported on. So it's information that I have as a board member. The second thing that I've learned in value, paramount to the way that students' learning is differentiated is that students with IEPs receive all their required services in minutes that they are entitled. However, the special education support that a child receives is not defined by a place, as has been iterated both at the board table and in the presentation, but instead it's based on a determination by the IEP team of how to best provide supplementary supports and services within, and this is quoting from the law, the least restrictive environment in accordance with the student's goals and objections. Now, location of those services, whether it's a center or whether it's in homeschool, is really not a predetermined criterion, except, interestingly enough, for the presumption, and Jason underscored this, that students will be educated in the general education setting to the fullest extent possible. And most importantly, to the success of the child, the IEP goals do not change based on location. Third thing that I learned and value, the district has diligently, carefully, and incrementally advanced the special ed strategic plan. It has done so by investing in substantial and ongoing professional development led by Dr. Costin, a nationally respected inclusion expert. But in addition, teachers have been supported by their building leadership, their instructional coaches, the director of student services, and the special education coordinator. I have found the work of our administrators to be impeccable. They've proven knowledgeable of the inclusion process, scrupulous in adhering to IDA legal requirements, dedicated to building teacher capacity, faithful in shepherding professional development inclusive practices, committed to meeting and working with the Special Education Committee and our board representative, responsible in providing timely and informative reports to the board, and tireless, transparent, and professional in comprehensively answering board member questions. As a member of a governing body, I could not have asked for more in terms of this professional staff's work and communication to us. Finally, much has also been asked of our special ed and general ed teachers, and much more is going to be asked. And so this is just an example. Together, they've invested time in examining the essential grade level learning standards, established student learning goals, and jointly worked to create appropriate learning environments for all students in a general education setting. Now, this may not be an overstatement on my part, but it's clearly my own opinion to say that for the first time in District 41, we are truly able, or certainly approaching the point where we can teach to the individual needs of all students. No longer a comforting aphorism, but now a life-enhancing skill. We've just begun the process of educating students without isolating them from their peers. But I have found the process and the plan to be well thought out and executed by talented, caring, and committed professionals. It's still early in the evolution of inclusion at District 41. But at this point, I believe the district has earned the support of this board member. And as a continuing board member, I'm committed to working with the new board and the incoming superintendent to provide proper oversight to the district's exclusionary practices and take into consideration the needs of all students and the professional opinions of our teachers. And if I am fortunate enough to be the next board president, I will bear the responsibility to monitor the district's inclusionary practices with care, an open mind, and with a deep respect for the heartfelt concerns of parents and educators. Thank you. Thank you, Kurt.
Thank you. Your statements. Kurt, it's you.
All right. Moving on to action items. First one is, and I should reference that Mrs. Clark left the meeting at 8:15.
And Kurt, I've got team members who are going to leave. They're not, again, leaving out of disrespect. They have to be in Springfield for a conference that starts early tomorrow morning. So 3 people are going to get up and walk out. So sorry, Kurt.
They won't be the first time.
Oh, you got correct.
She said what?
She said, I haven't walked out.
So on the consent agenda, are there any items that board members would like to be removed? Seeing none, can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Second.
Roll call. Is there any anybody have any further discussion? Okay, roll call.
Mrs. D'Ambrosio?
Yes.
Mr. Robach?
Yes.
Mrs. Nelson?
Yes.
Mr. Buckles?
Yes.
Mr. Curry?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Motion carries. We're moving to superintendent recommendations. We have two. And we've talked pretty extensively about both of these. So, but item 1 is 2020 technology recommendation. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion?
This is the Chromebook refresh.
Chromebook. Yep. Roll call.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Curry?
Yes.
Mrs. D'Ambrosio?
Yes.
Mr. Buckles?
Yes.
Mr. Robach?
Yes.
Mrs. Nelson?
Yes.
Second item is board policy and procedures revisions. May I have a motion on this item?
Motion?
Second.
Any discussion?
The two was talked extensively at the last one.
Right, this came up, yeah, this was just, again, a change in the from our board policy. Effective January 1st of 2019, this was effective, and now we're all catching up through our press service.
Roll call.
Mrs. D'Ambrosio?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Curry?
Yes.
Mr. Robach?
Yes.
Mrs. Nelson?
Yes.
Mr. Buckles?
Yes. Motion carries. Do we have any items for consideration for future agenda? None? No. Shocked. Wow, you got an easy job.
Well, thanks, Kurt.
Do we have any other? I have one. And this came out of, I actually asked Mrs. Clark about this. In terms of admin compensation, when Mrs. Clark and I first came on the board in 2015, the admin compensation was already completed for the following year, and so we were not involved in that, which was fine. 2 years ago, it was done prior to Mr. Curry, Mr. Lobach, Mr. Bruno, Mr. D'Ambrosio coming on. So this time I asked why that wasn't done, why we didn't do it now. And I've got some notes from Stephanie, but when asked about it, Dr. Gordon said that the new board would handle it. She went on to indicate to me that Dr. Gordon had told her we typically approve administrator contracts and compensation in May. In 2017, the board president asked that we bring it forward in April. So it looks like it was an action by Mrs. Nelson to move it forward, but I just wanted that to be for the record that we will not, it will be left to the new board to approve the compensation. So,
Apparently I'll have something to do.
yep. So,
At least one item on the agenda.
yep. So,
I guess I
Oh,
just have one
just-
point, and I just have one quick point, and just, not anything, but just so everybody knows, I will be a little late for Thursday's meeting, just no disrespect to you, the incoming board members, I just have to think of Ben Franklin.
Sounds good.
we have upcoming meetings, Thursday, April
Oh,
20th.
I'm sorry.
Oh,
I just
sorry.
didn't realize this
No.
is going to be your last meeting, but I just want to say publicly, you're a heck of a guy. I know there's been, you say things that, I think a lot of people may not have guts to say, and I know that sometimes can be difficult, kind of putting some target on your back, but, I think our community is better for, our district is better for, and thank you for your service.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Anybody else want to say anything nice about me? I know Kayla, my daughter,
Thank
will
you,
say
Kurt.
nice things to me. She always does. You do. Yep, that's true. So upcoming meetings, Thursday, April 25th, special board reorganization meeting is at 7. Monday, May 6th, special workshop meeting is at 4:30. Monday, May 6th, regular board meeting at 7, and Monday, May 20th, regular board meeting is at 7. I don't believe we have any closed session, so go ahead and call to adjourn the meeting.
Have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Motion?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.